Good people do not turn evil overnight. That is a comforting lie we whisper to ourselves in the dark. The terrifying reality is that your morality is not a permanent character trait. It is merely a fragile switch waiting for the exact right environment to flip. You, sitting right there, are exactly one bad situation away from becoming a monster. This is not some cynical philosophical theory. It is a documented, measurable glitch in human nature known as the Lucifer Effect. To understand how easily the human mind fractures, we must rewind to August 1971. A quiet psychology basement at Stanford University was systematically transformed into a mock prison. The core objective was simple, yet deeply flawed and ethically dangerous. Psychology professor Philip Zimbardo wanted to map the psychological effects of perceived power. He recruited 24 perfectly ordinary and psychologically healthy college students for the study. These young men passed extensive psychological profiling and displayed zero antisocial tendencies. They were healthy, highly intelligent, and completely normal in every measurable way. The volunteers were randomly divided into two groups by the simple flip of a coin. Half of the young men became prisoners. The other half instantly became their heavily armed guards. The prisoners were arrested at their homes by actual local police officers. They were stripped, aggressively searched, and thrown into a bleak holding cell. The system stripped their names and reduced them to mere numbers on cheap smocks. The guards were handed heavy wooden batons and crisp khaki military uniforms. They also received reflective aviator sunglasses to hide their eyes. Those sunglasses were not just a random fashion choice for the guards. They were a psychological weapon designed to completely erase human empathy. At first, nobody took the simulation seriously at all. Day one was awkward, filled with nervous laughter and strange interactions. They treated the basement like a bizarre and slightly uncomfortable summer camp, but human nature absolutely hates a power vacuum. The simulated authority quickly hardened into something violently real and terrifying. On the morning of day 2, the prisoners barricaded their cell doors. They used heavy iron beds and began loudly taunting the frustrated guards. This was the exact friction the prison system needed to ignite. The guards retaliated with brutal and overwhelming tactical efficiency. They breached the cells and sprayed the prisoners with freezing carbon dioxide. That single act of violent retaliation shattered the illusion of the experiment. The basement ceased being a university study entirely. It became a genuine psychological black site operating without rules. The guards began orchestrating sustained and deeply creative psychological torture. They forced the exhausted prisoners to sleep on bare concrete floors. They instituted mandatory roll calls at 3 in the morning. Guards forced the sleep-deprived students to perform deeply degrading physical exercises. The bathroom became a heavily guarded privilege, which was often entirely denied. Prisoners were forced to relieve themselves in buckets left inside their tiny cells. What terrified researchers wasn't just the abuse, but how effortlessly it emerged. The guards were pacifist college students just 48 hours earlier, yet they rapidly evolved into intensely sadistic and cruel tyrants. They were never explicitly told to be physically or mentally cruel. The dark environment gave them permission, and they innovated the cruelty themselves. This dark transformation is the core engine of the Lucifer Effect. It dictates that systemic power structures will almost always override individual morality. Modern psychologists call this terrifying phenomenon de-individuation. You strip away personal identity and replace it with a uniform. Once embedded in an institutional role, all personal accountability instantly vanishes. The guards no longer felt responsible for their brutal daily actions. The uniform was committing the abuse, while they were merely wearing it. The corrupt system demanded strict compliance, and they supplied it with enthusiasm. Even more disturbing was the psychological reaction of the captive prisoners. After the initial rebellion was crushed, their human spirit completely broke. They stopped seeing themselves as college students participating in a paid study. They internalized their subjugation and accepted their reality as permanent. They experienced profound emotional breakdowns, uncontrolled crying, and acute panic attacks. 3 prisoners had to be released within the first 4 days. They suffered from severe and undeniable psychological trauma. Yet, the remaining captive prisoners did not actively demand to leave. They became blindly obedient, accepting the fabricated authority as absolute truth. The ultimate victim of this psychological trap was the primary architect himself. Professor Philip Zimbardo installed himself as the powerful prison superintendent. He became so entirely consumed by his fabricated role that objectivity vanished. He watched the escalating torture on hidden cameras and did absolutely nothing. He was more concerned with prison security than their decaying mental health. It took an outside researcher walking into the basement to stop it. She expressed sheer horror at the conditions, snapping Zimbardo out of his delusion. The Stanford Prison Experiment was officially scheduled to run for 2 weeks. It was abruptly and permanently shut down after just 6 terrifying days. The psychological fallout permanently altered our fundamental understanding of human behavior. It forced us to confront a deeply uncomfortable truth about human nature. We prefer to believe that evil acts are done by inherently bad apples. The Lucifer Effect proves beyond a doubt that the apples are fine. It is the barrel holding them that is completely and fundamentally rotten. You place ordinary people in a toxic system that grants unchecked power. If you give them absolute anonymity, the system will win every time. It happened in that basement, and it happens in real military prisons. The psychological blueprint for profound human cruelty is always exactly identical. You isolate the target and strip them of their basic human rights. You hide the perpetrators behind uniforms and massive systemic bureaucracy. The Lucifer Effect is a dark mirror reflecting our evolutionary wiring. It warns us that modern civilization is an incredibly thin protective veneer. It is easily dissolved by the right combination of dark authority and environment. You might look at those young guards and think you are different. You whisper to yourself that you would have absolutely been the heroic exception. But the cold math of human psychology dictates a very different reality. In the dark, wearing the uniform and holding the baton, you change. You would not be the hero coming to save the innocent victims. You would just be the system, functioning exactly as it was designed.